Most systems out there try to fight human nature. They try to stamp out our selfishness, our greed. But what if a system did the exact opposite? What if it took greed and used it as its main fuel source? Well, today, we're diving into Bittensor, an AI network that's built on this wild idea that our own self-interest can actually be harnessed for the greater good.
I mean, this quote just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? It's a provocative idea, for sure. The thought that greed isn't just some destructive vice, but maybe, just maybe, it's a fundamental part of what drives us. And Bittensor doesn't just acknowledge this, it builds its entire foundation on it.
And that really brings us to the big question for this explainer. Is it really possible to build a system where everyone is just acting in their own selfish interest, but the result is something positive and valuable for everybody? Bittensor's answer is a resounding yes, and honestly, the way it pulls it off is pretty fascinating.
All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with the core philosophy. Then we'll meet the key players in this whole economic game. After that, we'll explore how a miner trying to cheat the system actually makes it stronger. I know, it sounds crazy. Then we'll look at the web of checks and balances that keeps everyone honest. And finally, we'll see the beautiful, self-improving machine that comes out of it all.
So what does it really mean to build a system on greed? Well, BitTorrent's philosophy is super simple. It just assumes everyone is selfish. It doesn't try to guilt people into being good. Instead, it just creates a structure where the only way to get what you want, which is profit, is to contribute real, actual value to the network.
The magic ingredient here is something called incentive alignment. It just means the system is set up so that if you want to make money, you have to do things that make the whole network better. Your greed and your contribution become two sides of the very same coin.
Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Well, it all comes down to the people, or the participants in the system. The whole thing works because of the interactions between four key players, and each one is driven by their own selfish goals.
First up, you've got the miners. They're the workhorses doing the heavy lifting, the computational stuff like generating images or crunching data. Then you have the validators. They're like the quality control, checking the miners' work and ranking it. The subnet owners are basically the bosses. They set the rules and decide what kind of work gets done. And last but not least, you have the stakers. They're the investors, putting their money on the line, betting on the subnets they think will be the most successful.
Okay, now this is where things get really clever. Let's look at the main conflict in the system, the tug-of-war between the miner and the subnet owner. You'd think this would be a huge problem, right? But it actually turns out to be Bittensor's greatest strength.
This slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the miner. Their goal, get the most reward for the least amount of work possible. They're always looking for shortcuts and loopholes. But on the right, you have the subnet owner, who's got a ton of their own money invested. Their goal is to maximize the value of their subnet by creating something genuinely useful. So yeah, their goals are in total opposition.
And here's the twist. This constant pressure from miners trying to break the system is exactly what the subnet owner needs. It's not a bug, it's a feature. This constant battle is what forges a product that's actually valuable.
So this process, right here, is what makes the system battle-hardened. First, the miners exploit it. They are constantly poking and prodding for any weakness they can find. So what happens? The subnet owner is forced to fortify the system, patching those loopholes to protect their investment. And the result of this never-ending fight is step 3, value creation. The subnet becomes so tough, so leak-proof, that the only way for a miner to get paid is to do exactly the high-quality work the owner wanted in the first place.
So the miner's greed is kept in check by the owner's greed. But what about the other players? What's stopping them from cheating? Well, that's where this web of accountability comes in, making sure everyone's self-interest keeps someone else honest.
So let's tackle the first potential problem. Validation can be expensive. So what's to stop a validator from just getting lazy and cutting corners? Or worse, what if they just start rewarding their own miners to game the system and rake in rewards they didn't earn? The system has this awesome built-in defense called UMA consensus. Think of it like this. All the validators have to roughly agree on who's doing good work. If one validator starts giving out weird scores that don't match what everyone else is seeing, they fall out of consensus. And the penalty? The rewards get slashed. Big time. So their own greed, their desire to get paid, forces them to be honest.
Okay, but what if a validator is a little more sneaky? Instead of doing the hard work of validation themselves, why not just copy the scores from an honest validator? They'd save a ton of money and still stay in consensus. How does the system stop that?
And again, it comes right back to the subnet owner's self-interest. To make sure they're getting what they paid for, good validation, they can use tools like a commit reveal method. This basically hides the scores for a while, so it's impossible for lazy validators to copy. They're forced to do the work themselves if they want their payday.
So what about the person at the top of the food chain, the subnet owner? They're pretty powerful. What's stopping them from creating a totally worthless subnet, hyping it up to get investors, and then just cashing out? You know, a classic pump and dump.
This is where the stakers come in as the ultimate check and balance. They're the investors, and their only goal is to back winners. If they see a subnet owner isn't creating real long-term value, they're going to pull their money out and put it somewhere that will. And if an owner loses enough investment from stakers, poof, their subnet gets kicked off the network completely.
So when you put all these pieces together, all these selfish players being held in check by other selfish players, you get something pretty incredible. You end up with a completely decentralized, self-correcting, and self-improving machine.
And this is where it all clicks into place in this perfect virtuous cycle. Just follow the arrows here. The stakers keep the owners honest. The owners keep the validators honest. The validators keep the miners honest. And then in this beautiful final twist, the miners, by trying to cheat the system, circle all the way back and force the owners to make their product even better. It's amazing. Everyone, by chasing their own greed, makes the entire network stronger.
And what you're left with, at the end of the day, is a true meritocracy. It's a system where gaming it, where being corrupt is designed to fail. It's a place where the best ideas and the most valuable contributions are what actually get rewarded. The value just naturally flows to those who create it.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? Bittensor doesn't ask us to be better people. It doesn't rely on anyone being altruistic. It just accepts human nature for what it is, our greed, our self-interest, all of it, and cleverly channels it into something incredibly productive.
I mean, this quote just says it all, right? The system is designed expecting people to be greedy. And by anticipating it, by designing for it, it transforms what could be a huge weakness into the very engine that drives the whole thing forward. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Bittensor is this radical experiment in designing incentives for AI. But its core ideas bring up a much bigger question. How many other problems could we solve if we designed systems that actually worked with our nature instead of constantly trying to work against it?